For decades, he was this ghost at the center of his own story. Robert Durst, the heir to a massive New York real estate fortune, was the main suspect in not one, not two, but three different cases: the disappearance of his wife, the execution-style murder of his best friend, and the dismemberment of his neighbor. And yet for over 30 years, the guy walked free. So how on earth did it all finally come crashing down? It all boiled down to this one single moment, a truly chilling mumble spoken to himself that was accidentally recorded on a hot mic while they were filming a documentary. I mean, this was the confession that investigators had been chasing for decades, and in the end, it was delivered to the world by the man himself. And that right there, that is the million-dollar question, isn't it? This is the story of a man who apparently craved the spotlight so much that he invited cameras into his life. And in doing so, he seems to have completely forgotten that those cameras would capture the very truth he'd spent his entire life trying to hide. All right, so to really unpack this, we're going to start at the end with the moment that completely changed everything. You just can't make this timing up, as literally millions of people were getting ready to watch the final damning episode of this documentary about his life. Robert Durst was in a hotel room in New Orleans getting arrested by the FBI. The show hadn't just told a story, it actually created the ending. So to understand how we got to that point, we really need to go back, way back, and look at the trail of death that just seemed to follow this guy wherever he went. Okay, so the timeline of suspicion, it spans almost 20 years. First up, his wife Kathie vanishes without a trace in 1982. Then, fast forward to 2000, his closest friend Susan Berman is shot execution-style right as police were getting ready to ask her about Kathie's disappearance. And then, just a year later, his neighbor, Morris Black, is killed and dismembered. Durst actually admitted to that killing, but incredibly, he was acquitted. Now, check this out. This cable, this is taken directly from the prosecution's case files, and it just lays out the chilling parallels between the Berman and Black killings. In both cases, the victim was a friend of Durst's who was shot in the head. And in both cases, what does Durst do? He flees the state and assumes a false identity. I mean, the pattern was just undeniable. So for years, these cases just went cold. Police had their suspicions, for sure, but they had no solid proof. And then, something totally out of left field happened, a television series. In a twist you literally could not make up, Durst himself reached out to the filmmakers. He'd seen their fictional movie about his life, a film called All Good Things, and he liked it so much he offered to sit down with them and tell his side of the story. He gave them more than 20 hours of interviews, just unprecedented access. And this wasn't just for TV. This had real legal consequences. This is an official motion from the LA District Attorney's Office, and it confirms that the evidence the filmmakers dug up became a cornerstone of the actual legal case against him. The entire case, when you really boil it down, hinged on one crucial piece of evidence, something the filmmakers found buried in an old box of his papers. It was called the Cadaver Note. It's this cryptic, anonymous letter sent to police way back in 2000, basically telling them where to find Susan Berman's body. For 15 years, the police knew that whoever wrote this note was probably the killer, but they had no clue who it was. And then, the filmmakers found this. On the left, you see the anonymous Cadaver Note. And on the right, that's a letter Durst sent to Susan Berman just a year before she was murdered. The block lettering looks almost identical, right? But the absolute smoking gun was that shared, really peculiar misspelling of Beverly Hills. So the filmmakers took both of these documents to a forensic expert, and his conclusion was crystal clear. The handwriting on the Cadaver Note and the letter from Durst, they were written by the exact same person. They had finally linked Durst directly to the scene of Berman's murder. This discovery set the stage for the final, truly dramatic confrontation. So in their last interview, the director, Andrew Jarecki, he puts the two notes down, side by side, and shows them to Durst. And Durst admits, yeah, they look similar, but he flatly denies writing the Cadaver Note. The interview was incredibly tense, and then it ended. But the story? Oh, it was not over. Not by a long shot. Right after that interview wraps, Durst excuses himself to use the restroom. But he forgot one tiny, critical thing. He was still wearing his microphone, and it was still recording every single sound. Alone in the bathroom, he just starts
talking to himself. This rambling, agitated, and deeply incriminating monologue.
Once they discovered that audio, the filmmakers handed all of their evidence over to the police. Based on that handwriting match and the hot mic recording, the LAPD got a murder warrant. And on the very eve of the show's finale, the FBI tracked Durst to New Orleans and placed him under arrest. So at his trial, the prosecution's case was really built on three main pillars. You had the shocking bathroom recording, you had the damning handwriting analysis, and you had incredibly powerful testimony from a former friend, Nick Shaven, who told the jury that Durst had confessed to him years earlier, saying of Berman, "It was her or me. I had no choice."
And so in 2021, nearly 40 years after his first wife disappeared, a jury finally found Robert Durst guilty of the first-degree murder of Susan Berman.
And if you have any doubt about just how crucial the filmmakers were, listen to this. The lead prosecutor himself, John Lewin, he gave full credit where it was due. He straight up acknowledged that without the investigation done by the documentary team, justice for Susan Berman might never have happened. The Robert Durst case is just a landmark. It completely blurs the lines between media and the criminal justice system, and it really forces us to ask a pretty profound question about the whole true crime genre. When a documentary doesn't just report on a story, but actually becomes its final chapter, where exactly does entertainment end and evidence begin? And what does it mean when the search for a good story is the thing that finally delivers justice?